This is my girlfriend Samica. She's been rocking the Sony XM4s for quite a long time, and she likes the sound, she likes the ANC, so I never really thought of anything about it, never really worried about it. However, recently we've done reviews on the Dali IO12s and the Focal Batiste, and it really opened my eyes onto other options out there, and we really noticed that the ANC from the XM4s really wasn't keeping up. So in my default brain, I figured I could just upgrade her to the XM5s. However, through testing some of these other headphones, I knew that there's got to be a better option in terms of sound quality for her that may get her, somewhat near the ANC capabilities of Sony's. But me and being indecisive, I figure why burden myself figuring out what she wants rather than giving her a couple of options and make her choose. So over her trial, she finally did find the headphone that was right for her. And that's when it leads us to here, with these PX8s from Bowers Wilkins. These are the headphones she ended up not opting for, although I know she was reluctant in that because these are just so pretty. Even down to the packaging and the case and the magnets used, everything is just a great presentation by Bowers Wilkins, and not many other companies can kind of spar on them in terms of their overall presentation and build. It's just very smooth operation, very pretty to the eyes. So that is a definitely big thing to consider, even though sound and all that other stuff is there as well. So she did end up picking the Mark & Levinson for reasons on her own, and to understand why she did that, you'll have to wait for the video. We're currently shooting that, but that'll be on her channel. When that's ready, it will be in the link above and below so that you guys can see that. But for now, I figure why not I take some intimate time with the PX8s and see what I like about them and what my recommendations are. From my perspective. Again, we have different ears and all that stuff, so me and Samica have different tastes, but I figure since so many of y'all wanted to see what the PX8s were like, I could give you my thoughts. And yeah, so now that you know why we're here, what we're focusing on, let's get into these and see if these are the right headphones for you. The PX8s are predominantly made of leather and metal. Very solid construction, yet still maintain a lightweight that is easy to carry around and fit on head. It's not as light as the MX5s, where those are like 250 grams. However, at 320 grams, they're still lighter than most of the other competitors out there, and they won't really have too much sway because they are so sleek on the head. They also don't have an extremely strong clamp, so for marathon listening, this shouldn't cause you any issue. And overall, again, the materials are very nice and smooth, so don't worry about these rubbing or poking in any weird direction that will cause you discomfort. As for the headband, it is cushioned, but it is quite thin, but thanks to the light clamp and the light weight, you're not really going to have any issues with hot spots or anything like that. The only concern I'd say is potentially ripping. As I read on Reddit, there's some quality concerns around that stitch line. Moving to the arms of the headphone, the cables are braided, recessed, and hidden away from any sort of snags, so it's really nice in terms of the overall aesthetic, but also function of the headphone. The adjustability is also very smooth. There's no clicks here, so you can get a lot of adjustability and silent operation. If you move down to the swivel, it's very smooth, 180 degrees, very frictionless and nice to the feel. As we move to the actual drivers, these are 40mm dynamic drivers with carbon fiber cone diaphragms, and the drivers are tilted to really form to the ear. I feel like this is a nice feature that a lot of Bowers Wilkins have. As we move on to the ear pads, they follow that nice Napa leather construction that are soft and supple. However, I will say out of the box, this leather sort of felt plasticky. It took some time to break in and get that nice supple and real leather feel, so don't get discouraged when you take these out of the box. I will say that the foam feels a little bit thin, but it does have a nice little bounce back to it. It's not the thickest foam that I've seen out there, but again, this light clamp and lightweight make these still comfortable over long listening sessions. And as we talk about functions, it's mostly buttons and switches. On the left side, you have your ANC and transparency control, while on your right side, you have your power and your Bluetooth function, as well as your playback controls and volume controls. Playback is controlled through a double click, triple click, or single click of the middle button. Everything is tactile and very easy to use. And also, according to Samica, the tones are very nice when operating this headphone.
Alright, so this is the sample of what these headphones sound indoors in case you're using them for work, at a coffee shop, or really anywhere where you're inside. For the ANCs, I will say that if you don't have music on, you can still hear people pretty clearly. even with the noise canceling on. But when you do have music on, you still can hear up to around like the 50% or maybe even 60% music mark. It sounds more like a murmur after that. It's not 100% noise canceling, so keep that in mind if you're working and you want completely to block out people around you. If you're using your volume at less than 50%, you're still going to be able to pick up voices around you, so something for you to keep in mind. So here's a sample of what the ANC sounds like for you. So this is a sample of the headphones outside, and the ANC outside is still not super noise canceling. I was on the bus and there were two people talking behind me, and my volume was around 40 or 50%. I could hear them so clearly. So you can tell me how this sounds for you as I'm walking around Boston and see how you feel about it.
So the samples from Samica were helpful in getting a real sense of how these sound on the mics, ANC, and transparency, but I did want to give my experience on using these and how I kind of felt about them. So on the microphones, I think they're very serviceable. I think they're consistent and they will have enough volume where you can have a conversation with someone. I don't think there's anything that's really offensive in terms of like plosives, anything that will kind of like offend the person listening to you. So you can have long conversations without issue. You may need to have a little bit of crank on the volume on the other side, depending on what phone it is. But overall, I think it's a very pleasurable experience. I will say that it's a little bit processed, so not the most natural tone that I've heard out of it, but definitely, you know, well enough where it's not going to be super annoying to listen to you. So I don't think you should have any issues with that. There is a consideration for weather. So if you're taking calls outdoors, there isn't a tremendous amount of wind resistance in that microphone. So things do come through, especially if it's a windy day. And again, here in Boston, it's been pretty crappy, super winds. So like I have had cuts in my voice when having conversations, but on normal days, it's not too bad outside at all. As we move to the ANC, I think I've had a pretty good experience from it. What I will say is that it does have this sort of layer of white noise, a little bit of a whoosh there, regardless of where you are. So even when I'm indoors and there's nothing on, there's no air conditioning or whatever, I still hear that white noise. So it's either the mics are super sensitive or they use that sort of hiss from the mic to present their transparency, which would be strange. But that's just something that it was noticeable to me, may not be noticeable to you depending on your previous experience. But the weird thing that I saw was that talking to people was supernatural. Like their voices sounded great, but me hearing myself was robotic. So far field seems to be a lot better than near field, but I think that might be okay because, you know, when you're using transparency mode, you probably want to hear the more far stuff more natural. So definitely don't be too concerned about it from that perspective, but just when you're talking, there's going to be that kind of dynamic. And then as we move to ANC, it's kind of negligible. I don't want to be too like exaggerated here, but it is not the strongest ANC for sure. It's nowhere near Sony, but it's also nowhere near even the middle range. So from my perspective, it's kind of like someone just covered their mouth. So it's like I'm talking, but now I'm talking. Like it doesn't block out a ton. There's not really levels with the ANC either. So it's just not doing great from that perspective, especially with spoken word. It does better with like white noise. So if there's like an air conditioner, office, you know, purifier, stuff like that, it won't be too bad. But like, I wouldn't trust this on like an airplane where there's like a larger amount of noise in the ground, or like in the background, or just a lot of people talking. It won't be able to block those out as much. So like a cafe setting wouldn't be great for this either. So, you know, it does stuff. It just doesn't do a lot in my perspective, but maybe I'm been a little bit spoiled by testing out all these other headphones recently and having a direct comparison. But again, these are premium. That's just something that you should keep in mind if ANC is super important to you. But we should definitely talk about the app. There's a few things on here that I want to talk about. So let's go to my phone and talk about what's available to you. So the companion app for this headphone is the Music Bowers Wilkins app. You can find that on the Apple Store or the Play Store. But it's not the greatest rated app. It's at 2.6 on the Play Store currently, but I think it's mostly because of limited aspects to it rather than functionality. Overall, I think that the app works fine. It just could have a little bit more bells and whistles for something this price. But when we open the app, you can see on the top you have all your available connections of what you connected. So this does have multi-connect and give you the ability to quick swap between them as well as add devices as needed. And then on your next panel, you have all of that cancellation, pass through, and all those modes that you can adjust in the app as well that we just went over. And then this next area where it says try it out is essentially just a guide for you. So if you forget how to use your controls, anything like that, you'll have this in quick swipe access. So that's always good, especially for people who tend to forget that or use a lot of different headphones a lot and need a refresher on how to function these PX8s. If we go down further into the tone controls, again, it'll bring you into your environment control, being able to change your different sound modes, but it will also give you some rudimentary fixes to treble and bass. Again, if you want to attenuate anything up or down, you can do that. I think this is where people wanted a little bit more, you know, maybe a 5-band or even presets might be able to give you a little bit more flexibility of this headphone, give you a little more control of your sound. And I think that's not too much to ask for a headphone this expensive, so I could imagine this is where people really wanted a little bit more control, a little bit more function out of Bowers and Wilkins, but at least they do give you the basics here. Even adding a mid would have been nice here, but maybe that's something that they can push on an update. And also, you'll have the ability to change your quick function button. Right now, I have it on environment control, but you could also change that to a voice assist if you're one of those people that uses the Google or Siri functions a lot. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. And finally, you can do wear sensors. I tend to take these off because I have weird Phoenix around them. But, you know, if you like making sure things get paused when you take your headphones off, whatever, you can do that, as well as you can rename this device so that it's easily identified as yours when connecting. Outside of that, there's not really much more functionality outside of this except for being able to factory reset as well as push updates through the app. So you're really just limited to very basic EQ, environmental control, some controls over your functions, and just instruction manual. So I understand why this is a little bit lower rated just because of the bare bone nature of this app. But again, it'll give you the basics of what you need to make sure this headphone is up and running and can still get updates. Moving on to the sound quality of these headphones, the PX8s are like V-shaped, well, kind of U-shaped. They're a little bit more refined in terms of how they approach bass than your standard like Sony XM5s, but they are more bass forward for sure in terms of sound signature. They have a little bit more darker tone to them, so they're not going to emphasize the brightness of some of the trebles as much, and I think that's gonna impact sound kind of genres depending on who the vocalist is as well as the vibe of the overall genre. But like first track I tried this out with was Billie Eilish, Birds of a Feather. Lighter voice, you know, very poppy vibes to it. The bass extension felt like it pushed things together a little bit more. There's less separation. Her voice didn't ring or haunt as much as it would normally in a song like this for me. It just didn't have that sort of grasping power from her vocals that I would expect. And I think that's just because the bass was a little bit overpowering her vocals and kind of squishing the instruments together. So I couldn't discern some of those things out of her vocal aspects. So that was something that I didn't like as much. The next track that I tried was Always Be My Baby, which is a cover from Brass Tracks, but I just really wanted to get like powerful horns to see how they react. So like how would jazz horns sound with this too? I did this with John Coltrane. It was a little bit better with John Coltrane because there was less complex bass elements with some of just like the literal bass instrument, plucking of a string, etc. But for Brass Tracks, when they have a lot of more percussive elements, a lot more different bass elements, especially with like lower bass horns, I had to bring it down. Like it was just a little bit overpowering and the horns didn't feel like they were shining, similar to how it didn't shine with Billie Eilish's voice. So I did bring down the bass in ANC mode because it did sound a little bit better in ANC mode for some reason. So that's something I will show you guys in samples of how it does extend the bass a little bit more. But I did bring it down in terms of the EQ just to get a little bit more balance out of the overall track. But it did bring harshness into the horns, which I didn't appreciate and I also didn't expect at all. So I thought going into ANC mode would kind of like prevent it from getting harsh, but it didn't. So that was just something I was not really a fan of. So then I went on to another track that had like very minimal bass and saying like what happens with a song when it doesn't have that stuff to get in the way. A little bit more. I love using this for headphones. MKG sounds super good. His voice has the nice haunting nature that I want. His song just really was balanced. I didn't have to worry about it fluffing out, or I didn't have to worry about being like messy. Everything sounded great, and I think because the simplicity of the piano being the bass element was just keeping his voice with all the aspects that I would expect from someone that sang like him, as well as just the overall like echoey vibe that he was putting throughout that track. I really liked that. And then the last one, I got a little bit of advice from Samica because I was trying to find a good, impactful, like bass-heavy hitting, more dancey vibe to it. I didn't want to do hip-hop because I feel like that was that might not necessarily vibe with everything, with it being so bass-forward. But she picked "Hold on Me" by Kygo, and this was so good. This is really good. Like this is very, like probably the best representation of the power of these headphones because it was so impactful. The bass was fun. I didn't have any issues with balance. I could hear the vocalists fine. EDM is where these headphones shine. So if you listen to EDM, every track I listened to in that genre sounded great. I did not have any issues with the Vici. I didn't have any issues with David Guetta. No one. It was just great. For everything that I put through that, it was fine. So if you're more heavy on the bass tracks, if you're more into the dance music, I think that energy that this has will make this a fun listen and be more to your vibe. But as I mentioned before, there is a little bit of a bass extension addition when you have it in ANC mode, which at the same time kind of attenuates the vocals a bit, so you can see a little bit of that being hit there. But overall, I do like the presentation of it better than when you just have it off. There are times where I would shut it off just to get a little bit more out of the vocals. So like for that Billie Eilish song, to me, it sounded better with ANC mode off, but it wasn't perfect. Like it was still missing some mids, and then I just had like kind of like an emaciated bass in comparison. So I did prefer like that bass layer underneath. But I think overall, from my perspective, the bass has the potential to put a veil on the song, depending on the genre and the singer. So this is something to be cognizant of. But let me show you some samples here. I will do 2 songs, and then I'll do like half the song will be in passive mode, and the other song other half will be in ANC mode, so you guys can see the difference there. So let me know what you think. My heart, so lush, I'm loving lying in your arms. I fall apart, this crush is gonna crush my heart. Baby, I should know better, should keep it all together, but I won't. Hanging on to it later, you're telling me forever. I lose it, yeah, I lose my mind, falling for it every time, drowning the depth in the blue in your eyes. It's like a rush, it's something God. Seem to do, even talk about who these PX8s are for. If you're a small to medium head size, small to medium ear size, and just like a headphone that's a little bit more sleek and close to head, not a lot of sway, really easy to put on, really easy to wear because of its lightweightness, these are great because these are the perfect headphone to run around the city, not draw too much attention to yourself, and just be really sleek with your overall silhouette. I think this is very like understated and classy from the way it looks. And again, if you're into the whole aesthetic of premium materials, premium looks, just so smooth with the operation, this is gonna be your cup of tea, absolutely. From the music front and the sonic perspective, like if you are more into the bass extension, you really like that thump in your music, especially if you love EDM, or even if you like music that has like not a lot of bass emphasis, just like there's like really little bass elements in your music, super good. This really stays true to those genres. They don't get super overpowered. They have a ton of vibe because of all that extra thump. I think that's just what this was made for. So if you fall within that, I think this would be perfect for you. However, if you're like me, who has a bigger head, bigger ears, and all that stuff, you may see some comfort issues just because over a longer period of time, I was starting to feel a bit stuffy. But keep in mind that I run pretty hot. Like I get hot easily. Even in the winter, I'm in shorts, I'm in boxers and whatever because I just overheat. Samica, not so much. She's more cold. So on the front of comfort, she never really had any issues. She never overheated. She was wearing these literally like, I don't know, 12 hours, no issues. So like, and obviously because these batteries is ridiculous, like 30 hours. You know, it's pretty respectable for what it's combating against. So, you know, she gets a couple days out of these, no problem. And she didn't have any comfort issues that she pointed out to me. But again, going back to what my preferences are, going back sonically, I think mine is just I wanted a little bit more balance out of it so I could use it against more genres that I listen to, so like R&B, Afrobeats, jazz. Just having a little bit more balance would probably take some of that harshness out or not need me to like really attenuate down the bass so much. And I think that's just something that I wish they could improve through the app. Like if they could put a 5-band in there instead of just 2, that would be a tremendous help in me getting a little bit more customization. Because I think the sound signature is kind of what they're going for here. They wouldn't really neutralize it out a little bit more like a Batiste or a Dali. But I would like for them to give some flexibility to the user. And I think that would boost their rating on their application as well. So for me, they're just not as neutral as I'd like them to be, to give me a little bit more flexibility there. But they're still a fun listen to for particular genres for me. But I think for a lot of people, they like that kind of U to V shaped and that more bass extended sound. They're just more used to that coming from the XM5s and stuff like that. These are just like a lot better sounding than XM5s. They're just a little bit more crisp in the bass. There's no mud. It's just better in the trebles, better in the mids than the XM5s. So like, they may not have the ANC of it, but they definitely improve on that. So if you're coming from the XM5s and want something better audio quality, these are definitely a good option. They're obviously more pricey, and at that price, there's some other options there that we've went over that you may want to consider. But if you like the vibe, if you like the sleekness, if you like the lightweightness, and this is your sort of sound signature, I wouldn't hesitate. These are super beautiful, and I think you'll enjoy these. But yeah, so another expensive headphone down the drain. Unfortunately, we aren't keeping these. These would be great to be on my wall of headphones, but we have so many already. So I appreciate you guys giving me all these options. Some of these things I didn't even know about, so it was great to sort of get those in the mail and really extend our search of what headphones we're bringing to Japan. These are making sure that we get the best options for ourselves, but hopefully along the way, you guys get a deep in-depth review from our perspective, and hopefully see if you want to pick those up as well. Always, we love hearing what your guys' experience with these headphones are, you know, trading tracks, trading ideas, trading, you know, things to try. It makes these reviews better. It makes the community more fun. So definitely do that all in the comments section. But if you could, please like, comment, subscribe, do all the things you normally do on a video that you like and love. And we'll see you soon. We got some more headphones on Samica's side. We have some other things that came through the mail. So stay tuned. As always, appreciate you. Later.